cracking flag on a cracking day in the capital.
It is.
With the YouTube champion.
And look at the location. 2 for the price of 1. Tower Bridge and the Tower of London. I mean, location, right? It's like a property show. Yeah. It's, you know what it is? It's good to be outdoors, isn't it? It's good to be outdoors.
Amen.
Shout out to Ring Raps asking all the questions here. The man that's finding these locations for me. It feels good to take the chair. And I feel like the chair feels right being here. Like the old school English Chesterfield. You know what? Yes.
Crown Jewels over there.
Yeah. All right, speaking of Crown Jewels, let's talk 160, 168.
Let's talk it. Who's the king?
Well, it's who wants to fight the king is the question, right? Canelo is the king. We know that. Canelo's probably the king of like 2.5 divisions right now. And who was going to fight him? 168 pounds. Personally, when I saw all the list of all these fighters, I wanted it to be Billy Joe Saunders. Just because you, Ring Raps, have been telling me that Billy Joe's got a chance, although I feel like he hasn't, but it was almost like, okay, let's see. Billy Joe's slick boxer, you know, confident, arrogant, which is important, I think, in boxing, unbeaten, 2-weight world champion. He was the man that I was like, you know what, go first. He doesn't want it right now, for whatever reason, and we can get into that in a minute as to why he doesn't want it. He doesn't want it, so it looks like it's going to Callum Smith, which isn't a bad alternative. Again, we're talking the ring-recognised #1, the WBA champion, WBC diamond belt, himself unbeaten, and coming off a good World Boxing Super Series, a dodgy win against John Ryder, but every fighter has a dodgy win. So I don't mind the alternative, but I did hope that it was going to be Billy Joe Saunders, especially as soon as I knew it wasn't going to be Gennady Golovkin, because that kind of got iced out very quickly. But it is disappointing knowing that Billy Joe, and this is his own words, hasn't taken the fight because 9 weeks isn't enough time to get in shape. Now, I have a problem with that. Like, 9 weeks for a professional athlete not to get in tip-top condition. I mean, you should be walking around on top condition, and the 9 weeks should be the tip of that top. Yeah?
So, for whatever reason,
Yeah.
Ben Davison in some interviews and Billy yesterday with some other channels hinted that there was personal reasons, there were logistical reasons, Ben doesn't have his own setup, etc., etc. But then again, you've got other stablemates like Josh Taylor cracking on.
Yeah, look, I get that. Ben doesn't have it. Josh Taylor's out there with Ben right now. He doesn't have his own stable, but there's no way, if you're Billy Joe Saunders, that you can't ask Eddie for those keys to that Matchroom gym, right? And say, Eddie, do you mind? I mean, Billy, let's be honest, Billy Joe can reach out to any gym in England, maybe apart from the Gallagher gym, and say, can I take that gym for 9 weeks? Here's the money. I've got a Canelo fight coming up. Are you telling me that's not possible? Because, I mean, again, I cover the UFC, as you guys know, and there's a lot of UFC guys cracking on now, and they've opened up gyms and they're cracking on. Billy Joe can literally tick any box he wants. Sorry, he can call any gym he wants, and they'll open the door for him in England, just because he's a lovable guy. Everyone likes him, and this is a big opportunity. No gym saying no. So I'm not having the he doesn't have his own gym thing. Nah, it doesn't wash with me.
So while we're here at what used to be the royal residence, an old palace in the King Charles and James's eras, Billy Joe, the court jester. Is the career on ice? Is it stagnating? Are we going to get to see the best of Billy anytime soon?
Stagnating. He's with a top promoter in Eddie. I mean, he mentioned other possible fights, Demetrius Andrade being one of them. He himself a 2-weight world champion. That's still a big fight. Not the big fight, right? It's not Canelo, but it's still a big fight. And it opens up doors for him in America. If he were to win that, then look, there's options out there. The good thing for Billy, especially if he can get back down to 160 or 168, whatever weight he wants to stay at, there's fights. There's fights galore. There's Benavidez, there's Plant, there's Eubank, there's GGG. There is eventually Canelo, there's Callum Smith, there's Charlo, maybe both Charlos. The other Charlo's talking about maybe if he beats Rosario going up. So there's fights everywhere. So there is no excuse for Billy Joe to look back in his career like Kell Brook does now in 2 years' time and say, I've not fought this guy because. Because there's too many options out there to use the because excuse. Far too many people in that 160 and 168 division and far too many big fights.
Is it a situation, particularly after this frustrating period of no sport, lockdown all around the world with different kind of degrees of measures, are boxers not getting the message that the aim of the game is to get back to work and to get busy? No one's saying don't take your worth. No one's saying don't get paid. But as we said before, better to get 1% of something than be 100% in charge of nothing.
Yeah, it's strange, right? I always champion for boxers to get what they're worth, right?
Sure.
Always champion it. Like, go out there and get what you're worth. But I think you've got to know what you're worth as well. And if you've been paid over the odds recently, you also need to know that, right? So if you've been paid 2 million when you probably shouldn't have been, there's no harm in taking 1 million right now. And we're not even asking as fans, we're not even asking for, the best to fight the best right now, because we understand that some of those fights take crowds to be there and they want 20, 30,000 to turn up. I just want to see the best fight number 6 right now, or the best fight number 7. Just fight, right? I just want to see some of these guys in the ring. We're getting it in America with Showtime at the moment. We're not really getting it over here. I just want to see some of those guys fight. I mean, Kell Brook's spoken about it as well. He's called out Crawford and Furman. Get those fights on. I feel like we've been hearing about these call-outs for the last 3 years now. Get some of these fights on. And I think some of these boxers need to understand that they just need to stay busy, right? Some of these boxers only get paid when they fight. And right now, they're like, I can't even call them part-time fighters. They're like, what's less than part-time?
Sometime.
Sometime freelance workers right now. They're just not fighting. And we need to see them fight. We need to see them fight desperately.
Is it similar to an over paid contract of a footballer who's happy to sit on the bench?
Yeah, no, it reminds me of a goalkeeper that is the substitute goalkeeper that rarely gets on, right, and happy to stay on the bench because he knows he's getting a wage regardless. These boxers need to come out of that mentality. They need to almost have, again, I know people are going to go mad at this, the MMA mentality right now, which is ready to fight. Yeah. Right, ready to fight. We saw Masvidal take on Usman on 6 days' notice, dropped 20 pounds, made millions. That's the kind of mentality we need right now in boxing. And boxing used to be like that.
Yeah.
Boxing wasn't about, I need 4 months to get ready. It's like, I'm ready.
It was throw down.
Stay ready. Let's throw down now.
Yeah.
Right? And a lot of boxers say things like, I'll fight week after week after week. Prove it. That's just all talk, isn't it?
Yeah.
Prove it. Do it.
It's almost like there's too much bubble wrap management and marketing protection around boxers now. It's almost like they've been so kind of brainwashed into thinking it's all about their brand, which it is to a degree. And the biggest stars in the sport have all got amazing brands and a team around them. But at the same time, Canelo takes on big fights. You've got
to understand what got them there first.
Yep.
And it wasn't the brand.
No.
It was them. Right? It was them fighting 4 or 5 times a year. That's what got them into that position. Big fights, right? Risky fights. 50-50 fights is what got the big guys into the positions where they're earning big bucks, especially if your name's Canelo. It was fighting 4 or 5 times a year. Obviously, that slows down as time goes on. We get it. The bigger fights take longer to make. I understand that, but I'm not talking about Canelo's level. I'm talking about the guys that are down from Canelo, the guys that should be wanting to get to Canelo's level, or the Mayweather level, or the Pac-Man level, take the fights, right? I mean, some guys now are retiring after only like 34 fights, which is quite rare when in sort of the early ages of boxing, not the early ages, 70s and the 80s and 90s, guys were retiring 40, 50 fights. That was kind of the norm. Pac-Man's 70 plus. Canelo's into his 50s now. It's a weird sport right now. I feel like it's in a weird place where everyone's waiting for that one big fight rather than taking 7 out of 10 fights. Everyone's waiting for that big mega 9 out of 10 fight rather than taking the small ones to build up to the big one.
Isn't the argument always that they're the guys that risk their lives getting into the ring? Who are we to say anything, right? Apart from being the paying fans.
Hey, you know what you sign up for.
Well, we are the paying fans as well.
You know what you sign up for, though. You know what I mean? I get it. It's a risky career.
But
I understand.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, nobody likes many heroes of the past have ended up with brain damage and concussions and deaths. We've had a couple of deaths in the last 12 months. It's never nice, but I mean, it's the aim of the game. It's a violent conduct sport.
It is the aim of the game, and I get that point. And look, boxing is dangerous, right? I mean, there's no getting away from it. Cutting weight to an extreme is dangerous. Taking your body from 220 pounds and trying to make it get to 160 is dangerous. Sparring is dangerous. It's all dangerous, and I'm definitely not. And I hope people at home listening to this don't think I'm neglecting that or dismissing that. It's dangerous. I get that, but I just want to see these guys in the ring, right? I'm a fan of these guys for what they do in the ring. I'm not a fan of their Twitter. I don't care. Yeah. I'm not a fan of their Instagram. I do not care. Yeah. I'm not a fan of their YouTube channels. I care about what they do in the ring. That's the most important thing.
I think part of the De La Hoya and Mayweather legacy has been to squeeze as much juice out of the berry for as few fights as possible, Not to say those guys' CVs and careers weren't stellar, they were, but they were also manoeuvred in certain ways, especially Floyd's. And now you're seeing other fighters who don't have particularly that backstory or resume.
No, but with Floyd, I'm going to interrupt you there. At least I think we almost think of Floyd in his last 10 to 15 fights. There were 35 fights before that.
Pretty
boy Floyd,
yep.
where he put it on the line.
Yep.
We took those fights.
Yep.
People can't forget that.
Yep.
So I feel like the fighters now that are manoeuvring, like the fighters you're talking about, we're not going to mention names, but the fighters you're talking about, they're almost manoeuvring the way Floyd did in these last 10 fights.
Yes.
Not thinking, okay, what did Floyd do the 40 before that?
Yes.
Same as Oscar. Oscar's Olympic gold medalist that, again, tough fights all the way up. Then, okay, the way he manoeuvres in these last 10, maybe. I think people have to remember, Oscar's last fight was against him dehydrating himself, to get down to 147 to take on a ridiculous Pac-Man. That was his last fight against Manny Pacquiao.
And it didn't end well for him.
Didn't end well for him, but that's the risk he took. He rolled the dice. And people might say Pac-Man was coming out smaller. Oscar hadn't made 147 for years.
Yeah.
But he knew to make that fight, that's what he's got to do.
Yeah.
So, I mean, these guys did roll the dice, and the fighters nowadays want Oscar, Floyd, Canelo money without looking at what Oscar, Floyd, Canelo did early in their career.
It's good to be safe. It's good to safeguard your well-being, your purse, your future, your career, but at the same time, with no action, there's no career.
Yeah, with no fights, this is all well and good, right? I mean, all these fighters can call each other out on Twitter. It's fantastic. How many fights have been made over Twitter in the last 12 months?
Too many.
Ridiculous. How many fights have happened?
Yeah.
There you go. So it's like the Twitter championship, right? We're going to give out Instagram belts like YouTube belts soon. Like, let's have a fight on Twitter. Let's see who can get as many words and as many characters.
Well, I said to my friend Grim Sickers the other day, we were talking about how he likes his steak, and he was like, "How'd you like your steak?" I said, "Well, I'm partial to a bit of fake beef."
And that's what it is, dude. Right now, we're seeing a lot of that. And I think the shame for us is that we know, look, we're upset because we know how much talent's out there. I mean, I wouldn't be doing all this if I didn't think the talent was there, right? If there was no talent there, I wouldn't be talking. I'd just be happy with what they give us. But when we know there's talent there, we're not getting the fights that we want based on what talent's there, then you can understand why I rant and you rant and other video channels rant, because talent's there. I mean, the talent at every weight class is there. Every single weight class right now is a bit deep. But we have to wait for those matchups.
If we take a tangent slightly from Billy Joe, anytime he's even asked about Eubank Jr., he just, rolls his eyes and scuffs and says, don't even mention him at the minute, he's a nobody. Eubank Jr. lives in Las Vegas, but has taken his time in lockdown to team up with a very unlikely trainer in Roy Jones Jr.
Yeah.
So he's been keeping busy. As you always say, he's fit 365 days of the year. Could a so-called champ like a Billy Joe look at someone else who's maybe not had the career he's had yet and be like, all right, look, fair due, like he's ready to roll?
Billy Joe said this when he was talking to Danny Flexen on Seconds Out. He says maybe he doesn't live the life. He's not a full-time boxer. That's his own words, not mine. He said, I'm the kind of person where you call me, do you want to fight? I'll say, yeah, give me 4 months to get ready. That's just how he lives right now. And that's not going to change, right? We all are very stubborn in our own ways. You're not going to change the way you've been doing. And look, he might look at it and think, why would I change? I'm unbeaten. I'm a 2-weight world champion. The guy that you keep talking about, in terms of Chris Eubank, has lost twice. Once to George Groves, not the best George Groves either, and once to me. So why would I look at him for ways in which to do things?
He's active.
I'm already beat him.
He's active.
He's not active though, is he? He fought James DeGale in February.
He had the fight in...
and then he had the fight against Kobarov, 1.5 rounder.
Yeah, the Kobarov shoulder gave away. Eubanks Jr. is the shoulder killer.
He's the shoulder killer. But it's interesting, because what's going to happen with Eubank? All these names, you're supposed to fight Charlo, and now Charlo is fighting Derevyanchenko. So that Derevyanchenko means he's out of the equation.
That's one of the fights on the calendar now. That's right up there.
That's right up there, right? It's a big one. That's a big fight. But Eubank's waiting in the wind. And right now, Billy Joe Saunders is there. And so as much as these guys don't like each other, these guys make good money with each other. It's the perfect fight.
In England, that's the fight. In States, Andrade? Billy Joe Andrade, unfinished business.
There's that mix, right? Again, this is why I say, although we're upset to see Billy Joe not fight Canelo, there are other names at 160 or 168 he can mix it with, and there's no reason for that next name to not be a name. He's not had a name opponent since David Lemieux. I mean, he's far too skilled to for this.
Yeah.
Far too skilled. So let's see what he can do next.
So I mean, if just to sum it up, no Canelo.
Yeah.
Let's say Callum fights Canelo, so no Callum at the end of the year.
Yeah.
Who's the next?
GGG's fighting, he's mandatory, so GGG's out.
So who's next on the list? Got to be Andrade.
Or Danny Jacobs. It's a name that we haven't mentioned at 168. Danny Jacobs is there. Okay. Who knows, right? I mean, again, this is what I'm talking. There are options. So there is no excuse because there are far too many big name, big money options. And this is why I'll get upset if it comes out that Billy Joe Saunders is fighting some guy from Poland. I'd get upset, and this is no disrespect to my Polish fans, but you guys know what I mean. I don't want to see a no name. There's too many names. There's at least 10 that he can fight and mix it with at 160 or 168 that generate money and interest. There's no reason at this stage of his career now to be taking back steps.
Ade, let's wrap this up with a bold prediction.
Go on.
Canelo, Callum Smith.
Canelo points. And that's not even that bold. I think that's kind of obvious, right? I don't think Canelo's stopping him to the body like some people say, and I don't think Callum Smith's stopping him either.
Why does everybody keep saying that? Just because of Rocky Fielding, who's nothing like Callum Smith? I mean,
just because they're tall and rangy and they've got that long torso, isn't it? And because he didn't look good against John Ryder. But I don't know why people said it. It's not like I've seen him really hurt to the body. I'm not the biggest fan of Callum Smith in terms of ability. Great person. So I do expect Canelo to run through him. And Canelo's now a natural 168. This is a guy that fought at 175 and looked big there. So he's going to come down to 168 and just fancy it. He's going to fancy it. And he's going to look at Callum Smith's last performance against John Ryder and think John Ryder's kind of my shape.
Yeah.
And we're still able to get in and under Callum Smith's long levers. If John Ryder can get underneath him, my God, what's Canelo going to do?
Do you think, though, I mean, obviously John fought a lot on his chest. Canelo is so skilled, he doesn't need to do that as such.
And you don't want him to do that because Canelo's just stronger. You don't want that leaning on your body, so that extra weight leaning up against you. So Callum Smith needs to fight this at range. Use what your mama gave you, right? Use those levers and just use the jab. I mean, it's so easy to say, but stay on the outside, use your jab and show a bit of power when you need to. Callum's a big boy. Callum's really is a 175 and masquerading at 168.
So he needs to Larry Holmes him.
He needs to Larry Holmes him and make it boring, but then you do that, you don't win a point decision. You know that.
But doesn't Callum's stock fly up either way? He gets a good payday, keeps in the mix, stays relevant. Quite is cracking flag. We'll wrap this up.
Yeah, let's wrap it up.
Doesn't Callum do himself? He doesn't lose any stock fighting the best boxer in the world.
How he loses.
No, but if he goes the distance.
If he goes distance, no problem at all. If he gets sort of pancaked like Rocky Fielding did, then yeah, he loses stock because this was the unbeaten ring recognized #1 fighting a naturally smaller guy. I know Canelo's fought way past him in weight in 175, but he's the naturally smaller guy. So if he gets flattened in like a 3 or 4 rounds, then it's a lose-lose. Even though he earns $5 million, it's not a good look. For the ring recognized #1 at 168 to get flattened by a natural guy at 160, no matter how special that guy is, that's not a good look. All right.
Ahoy.